the 6, a helping hand with your land.
Neil from Essex here to talk about introducing your children to equipment. In preparation for this video today, I sat and did a little bit of work looking at the recommendations from different manufacturers and industry groups and that kind of stuff in introducing your children to machinery. And by and large, that kind of advice just very simply says, don't do it. It doesn't give a whole lot of explanation of what is a child, at what age is it okay to introduce these kinds of things. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the choices that I have made personally for my family. Realize that when you're introducing children and equipment, the two do not mix in a lot of situations. It is really sad a lot of times in this industry when you read the news, you hear local news reports, people and children getting injured on equipment happens, and it happens a lot and way more frequently than what you probably realize. So let's start having this conversation from the perspective of dangers. This is dangerous stuff. When you're making this decision to introduce your kids to equipment, know that you're doing this with your own responsibility. Do not be doing this today because of something that you have heard this said by me, right? Don't trust the guy on YouTube. You need to understand your equipment well enough, the applications that you have, the children that you're involving in this kind of stuff, to know what is safe for your family. So be taking personal responsibility when you make these decisions. Don't blindly listen to me. So these are my two kids. Jack, how old are you?
6.
Jack is 6, and Garrett, who is?
11.
11. Jack and Garrett are 6 and 11. So the one thing that I struggle with a little bit when looking at, say, industry resources for these kinds of things is that the guidelines tend to simply go out and say children and equipment don't mix, but it does very little to define at what point a child is no longer a child. Jack, at 6 years old, is obviously a child, right? There is no place for Jack around this piece of machinery. Garrett, on the other hand, now at 11 years old, has shown enough responsibility in being able to drive simple things around the backyard, use simple power tools and that kind of stuff when he's with me. He's shown the responsibility that it takes in order to be able to handle something maturely. And so we get this funny age here of when does an 11-year-old become, say, responsible enough in order to be able to operate something like that. So I have made the decision as Garrett's parent for the applications that I have for my B-Series Kubota tractor that there is a place for him in operating this machine. So one of the primary things that I have had Garrett doing on my tractor to this point is mowing, right? Introducing a child to a lawnmower, a lot of people do early, right? There's nothing better than a kid out trying to make a buck push mowing somebody's lawn, right? In our case, with a little bit bigger equipment around and a little bit more work to do, I've allowed Garrett, in order to operate this machine, and come out here and mow this 3-acre field. Now, talking about my B-Series tractor in particular, this is not a hard machine to operate. It is essentially an overgrown lawnmower, right? It's got a steering wheel and a hydrostatic transmission. There's no clutch, there's no gears. And so Garrett is able to operate and drive the machine really safely. When you've been out running this back and forth, have you had trouble with it at all?
No, it's easy.
It's easy? And largely, what have you done? We turned the mower on and what?
I drive.
You drive. Drive back and forth. And what's one thing that we always talk about when you're out driving back and forth? What kinds of things are you keeping an eye out for?
Rocks, big sticks, and other things that could break the mower.
Things that could break the mower? What about the people around you and that kind of thing?
Make sure to stay away from Jack.
Stay far, far away from Jack. And a lot of times I would even hesitate if we're out here at all, is not even have Jack out here, because you know how kids are. Like I can't keep a close eye on everybody at all times, right? As much as you should be, you know, things like that happen. And so if Garrett's out operating the machine, generally Jack and I are, you know, he is, especially if he's out here, is nowhere near where Garrett's at.
We need to find something to do while Garrett's mowing.
We go find something else to do while Garrett's mowing. But we don't go too far away because we always want to be available to help Garrett if something goes wrong, right? So we're watching what he's doing and keeping an eye on what he's up to. So we're out here in a flat field where, you know, you're not ever going to be in a situation where you feel like the tractor's going to tip over. So besides the mower, you've used some of the other attachments out here. What attachments have you used?
I've used the mower and the grader.
The grader. And both things that are really just stuff that you set on the ground and drive, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We also have a grapple and some other things. That's the kind of stuff that we generally want to avoid. Loader work with kids scares me a little bit because loaders, when they start to get up high, will become really unstable and make the tractor you know, not safe, potentially tip over. We're in a totally basically flat area, but that kind of thing, even at 11 years old and being actually really confident with the rest of the machine, just doesn't seem like a good idea to me and something we're quite ready for yet. One of the consistent pieces of advice that you'll see when it comes to children around equipment is to never have a passenger, right? There's no safe place to put a child. You a child?
No, medium-sized child.
A medium-sized child does not fit on a piece of equipment with you, right? When you get to bigger equipment, you can have an instructor seat that's going to have a seatbelt and that kind of thing to have another person with you. But when you're in something the size of this, any kind of smaller piece of machinery, there is no safe place to put a medium-sized child on a tractor. So you see here, even with Jack, I can't really have him here on my lap at all. His feet are dangling down around the hydrostatic pedals. He tends to grab things, right? Be it the steering wheel or the loader stick or whatever.
I love the loaders.
There's way too many reasons not to have a medium-sized child on your lap while you're doing this. I mean, while I can fit him underneath the seatbelt and stuff with me here, if this machine goes over for some reason, while I can have a roll bar and a seatbelt, I wouldn't ever want to risk having him with me. So, you know, I'm willing to put myself in a lot more risk than I am when it comes to anything with my kids. Having somebody on your lap is just simply a terrible, terrible idea. You didn't learn to operate this machine with, you know, me sitting here with you. No. So how are some of the ways that we talk through learning to use the tractor? Do you remember? You don't remember? It's been a year or two. Being an equipment salesman, I'm very used to being near a person who is on a tractor, and so I probably have a much better comfort level with this than what a lot of other people rightly should have. But generally what I would do is put Garrett in the seat, make sure the roll bar is up with a seatbelt on. As long as you've done those things, if this machine goes over, he's going to be kept on the operator's platform, which is ideally what you're looking for. Can still get seriously hurt, but is a lot better off sitting here with the roll bar up and the seatbelt on. I then stand beside the machine, being very careful not to be in front or behind the tires in case the machine moves unexpectedly. As a sales guy, seen it happen before. It's something you want to be really careful of, that you're very aware of yourself. And then simply go through the instruction on operating the machine, how to turn the key, shut it off again if we need to. You do change ranges every once in a while. You know how the range selector works, so we talk about that. Talk about how to use the shifter. Talk about the hydrostatic pedal and how to go fast and go in reverse. You use the up and down thing for the implement. You really haven't changed four-wheel drive or any of that kind of stuff. But again, we're going to operate in areas where we don't need to know that kind of stuff, right? Just starting with the very basics of getting the easiest tasks done. Another thing you want to be mindful of is the implements that you're using. Well, this grading scraper in and of itself is fairly safe as long as nobody is standing on it while the thing is in motion. Other things like rotary cutters and that kind of stuff in particular can throw debris, stones and that kind of stuff. Dangerous for both the operator. If they're sitting up there, things can be tossed towards the operator, and especially anybody who might be standing nearby and watching. So you want to make sure that you give the piece of equipment that's out operating, you know, a lot of space to make sure there's no flying debris. So those are a handful of the decisions that I've made for my family when it comes to being around my machine. So just in summary, you really need to take personal responsibility for these decisions. These are things that you need to make very thoughtfully for your family, with your machine and your application, and really knowing that you understand this machine thoroughly. Not something that, say, somebody who's brand new to this piece of equipment should be throwing their child on. You really should be an experienced operator and understand the machine well before you ever put the lives of any of your kids at risk. And be very, very attuned to the fact that these are very real risks. Every couple of months we'll see news reports and that kind of stuff that are kids that are hurt around equipment. You're really much better off in the operator's seat. I would say that Garrett is almost safer sitting here in this seat buckled in on a roll bar than he is walking around out here while even I'm operating the machine. The operator is really a lot better off. So these things can be done in a acceptable level of risk for your family. So I'm choosing my words very carefully here today to give the gravity to this situation, but understand I feel like there's been huge benefits in our family and, say, Garrett's ability to respect what this equipment can do and understand the risks that are around it. So these are important conversations to have to help your children mature and respect these things. So good luck to you. Enjoy this kind of stuff. These are fantastic memories and great times that we all share together when we can come out here and work. It's time that I certainly am treasuring. Happy to be out here with my kids and working. What other things should you never do with the Grapple?
Use the Grapple to do orthodontics.
Orthodontics with the Grapple seems like a bad idea.
don't drive over Jack. Don't run over Jack with the mower. Don't run over Jack with the scraper.
If the tractor engine is on, do not take a chainsaw and cut open the...
Don't cut open the hood with a chainsaw. That's a good suggestion.
We shouldn't put Jack in the grapple.
Shouldn't put Jack in the grapple. That's definitely.
You just took me a picture.
Stop it!
Okay, that should definitely go in your like fails section. Fail.